In yesterday's lesson, a couple of the statements that you ended up finding counterexamples for were if-then statements. And we didn't really talk much about them yesterday. We'll talk about them in much greater depth today. In this class, we talk about if-then statements as conditional statements. If something, then something. If one thing is true, then another thing is true. And what you need to understand is that even if it seems nonsensical, it can be true. Here's an example that I always love to give. I'm going to make the statement, if pigs could fly, then I can't buy bacon. Okay? That statement is true. But Mrs. Clouse, pigs can't fly. No, of course not. Because if they could, then I couldn't buy bacon. All right? So the circumstances under which my statement, nonsensical as it may be, the circumstances under which that statement would be false would involve seeing a pig flying out there, and I can still go to that Publix down the street and buy some bacon. Okay? So a couple of things about a conditional statement. Remember, yesterday I told you that you need to use a different word in this class when we're talking about making an educated guess. Yesterday we talked about how previously you have used the word hypothesis in order to describe an educated guess. And I warned you that has a different meaning in this class, and that in this class, when we are making an educated guess, we call that a conjecture. Today, finally, we are talking about what a hypothesis is. It's nothing complicated. When you have an if-then sentence, the hypothesis is just the if part without the word if, and the conclusion is the then part without the word then. So in problem 1, you see very, very simply, we are being asked to identify what is the hypothesis and what is the conclusion. Go ahead. Since you're going to be writing plenty in this weekend's assignment, let's say we're going to underline the hypothesis once and underline the conclusion twice. So in this problem, my hypothesis is the if part without the word if. So can someone read to me what is the hypothesis of that statement in problem 1? What is the hypothesis of the statement in problem 1, Jesse? That's it. A number is even. That's my hypothesis. As I said, the conclusion of a conditional statement is nothing more complicated than the then part without the word then. So someone else, please. What is the conclusion of this sentence, Austin?
It is divisible by 2.
That's it. Nothing too fancy. What students sometimes struggle with is when a statement is not given to you in if something then something form, rewriting it in if something then something form. Here's your notes. So, and this is where it's almost going to feel like an English class, because you're going to hear me making references to grammar and nouns and verbs. And please bear with me, I am trying to make this as easy and universal as possible. When a statement, like the one in problem 2, is given to you not in if-then form, and you're being asked to put it in if-then form, what might be helpful to you is to think of the noun or the subject, not noun, let me be more specific. The subject of the sentence is the if. And basically everything else is the then. But certainly, you're not going to write a sentence. First of all, let's backtrack to get our grammar practice. What is the subject? One person, please. What is the subject of this sentence? what is the subject of this sentence? Sarah? Adjacent angles. So the reason why I underlined adjacent angle once and everything else twice is to kind of follow the format of what I was doing on the previous screen. Now I've identified what my hypothesis is and what my conclusion is. The issue, however, becomes actually making this sound like a sentence in the English language, because you're not going to write down if adjacent angles then share a side. It just doesn't sound right. Your English teacher would scribble red all over that. Jessie. Please.
If the angles are adjacent, then they share a side.
Beautiful. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Yes. If angles are adjacent, then they share a side. But I can't stress to you enough the importance of reverting to that language arts skill of identifying what the subject of the sentence is and what everything else is, so that you know what your hypothesis is, you know what your conclusion is, and then you just kind of make sure that it sounds like English. Okay? In problem 3, they're being asked, is the statement true or false? And that comes back to what I was talking about at the beginning of the lesson with the pigs flying. The only circumstances under which the statement is false is if you can identify a counterexample where the if part is true and the then part is false. So, part A, is the conditional statement true or false? One person, please.
True.
Anyone really, really good at their geography? You had a different statement?
I would think it's false, but I don't know exactly where, but I think it was Miami,
Ohio. Miami. There is a Miami, Ohio, yes. Okay, so actually, the statement is false because there's a Miami, Ohio. Now, granted, you might not have known that, so chances are good I wouldn't put a problem like that on an assessment for you. Okay, I might put something like, oh, let's remember the example from yesterday. If an animal is green, then it is a frog. That's definitely false. We talked about how a gecko would be a counterexample for that. Okay? How about part B? Is that statement true or false, Mr. Silva? Tell me a counterexample, please. 100 is a counterexample. It is divisible by 5, but it is not odd. Okay, before I pause and say, let's take a look. Yes, sir.
When you're writing counterexamples, do you have to write a case sentence, or can you just write it like
Fantastic question. The way that I write on the screen, I try to give you an example of what is an okay answer for you. No, it does not have to be a complete sentence. Okay, let's take a moment then. And I know you're not in your groups, but hopefully there's still someone in front of, someone behind you, that you can nudge and say, hey, what did you get for the your turn problem 1 and the your turn problem 2? Please take a moment and work through those, and then we'll continue. All right. Okay, let me clarify something. The problem 1, your turn, students are having no difficulty with. The hypothesis of it, just to make sure that we're all on the same page, the hypothesis for the your turn for problem 1 is an angle of measures 130, and the conclusion for the your turn in problem 1 is the angle is obtuse. What some of you are struggling with is that dolphins are mammals, and you're wanting to add stuff about eggs and live birth and breathing oxygen, but nowhere in the dolphins are mammals sentence does it have that content. Austin?
I put if an animal is a dolphin, then it is a mammal.
Absolutely, and a couple of other students came up with that as well, and that's what we're looking for. Okay? You don't want, please understand, adding words to the sentence so that it sounds like an English sentence is fine. But you don't want to add meaning to the sentence. You don't want to add content to the sentence. The bottom line is identifying what the subject is, and that's your hypothesis. And then everything else is therefore the conclusion. So once again, in your notes, you might want to jot down that a fantastic sentence for dolphins or mammals would simply be, if an animal is a dolphin, then it is a mammal. Because I'm not changing what the sentence is saying. I'm just changing the way that it's said. Yes, sir?
Could you also say if a dolphin is an animal? So.
That's redundant. Of course a dolphin is an animal. Whereas, if an animal is a dolphin, that's... Do you see the difference?
No.
If a dolphin is an animal, it's a certainty. A dolphin is an animal. Whereas, if an animal is a dolphin, that's not a certainty. I am an animal. Remember, humans are considered animals, but I'm not a dolphin. Do you see the difference? There's got to be some if to it. There is no if about a dolphin being an animal.
Well, like there's dolphins, and
Or-
there's the dolphin key, like NFL. So like, wouldn't you?
Now you're really you're thinking harder than you need to. If an animal is a dolphin. I heard some more questions over here. Have we resolved them? Okay, now we get to the real nitty-gritty of these if-then statements. In your notes, still on the front, you don't want to flip over just yet. Please notice that when I'm negating a statement, I am simply stating its opposite. Okay? So, for example, if I make the statement, today is Friday, the negation of that is not today is Saturday, or today is Thursday, or today is Wednesday. The negation of that is simply today is not Friday. Very simply, when you're trying to negate a statement, you just throw a not into it. If there already is a not in there, like for example, I might make the statement, today is not Saturday. The negation of that would be, today is Saturday. Okay? So, in your notes, you have room to indicate, actually, it's already been indicated for you, that the converse of a statement, let me backtrack. Since the conditional statement is abbreviated as P arrow Q, when we're talking about the abbreviation of a converse, all you're doing to a converse is flipping it around. So the converse of a statement would be Q arrow P. The inverse of that statement, the order of the statement is still the same. The if is still where it used to be, the then is still where it used to be, but I'm adding a not to both the if and then. So I end up with if not P, then not Q. Finally, the contrapositive of a statement, you have this in your notes already symbolically, and we will, of course, go over a couple of examples of taking an if-then sentence and writing the converse, inverse, and contrapositive. In your notes, you have that the contrapositive not only changes the order of the sentence, it also negates. So it's not Q, then not P. So what I want you to do when you are doing your homework is to think of these three lines as almost being a formula for how to write the converse, how to write the inverse, how to write the contrapositive. Okay, so in problem 4, we are being asked what are the converse, inverse, and contrapositive of the statement. If a figure is a rectangle, then it is a parallelogram. And I just realized that definition of truth value got cut off in your notes, and I apologize for that. You'll notice in your notes it says the original statement and its contrapositive are equivalent statements, which means they're either both true or both false. And it says the truth value of a statement is simply, and then it got cut off. You might want to please add into your notes that the truth value of a statement is simply whether the statement is true or false. So some of you saw how cool it was that I was kind of clicking and dragging the nots and the P's and the arrows and the Q's in order to make my statements. You'll notice, eyes up please, I've done the same thing with this stuff. So what I'd love is for one of you to come up and click and drag the parts of the sentence into place for the converse, just the converse. I want a different volunteer for the inverse or contrapositive. Can I get one person to please click and drag the hypothesis, conclusion, not if it's appropriate. Yes, Adrian, hit it. You're just clicking and dragging. That's exactly it. Yes. So in your notes, you might want to jot down that the converse of that original statement is if it is a parallelogram, then the figure is a rectangle. Now the instructions did ask us to identify the truth value of the statement, so let's go ahead and talk about that. If it is a parallelogram, then a figure is a rectangle. Is that statement true or false? What do you think? If it is a parallelogram, then it is a rectangle. What do you think? Is that true or false?
False.
It is false. Alyssa, can you give me a counterexample?
Square.
Technically, a square is a rectangle. It's a special kind of rectangle. Yes, sir?
Triangle.
A triangle is not a parallelogram. Okay? Make sure that you understand how to come up with a counterexample. It's got to be...
Trapezoid?
Trapezoid is technically not a parallelogram either. A rhombus. Would be a counterexample. It is a parallelogram, but it's not a rectangle. Can I get a different volunteer to please come up and click and drag in order to write the inverse of the statement? If you need to bring your notes up with you, because kind of the formulas are there. Lena, go ahead. You gotta drag it like you mean it. Okay, so where might you click and drag that word not so that it actually sounds like a sentence? There we go. Keep going. Fantastic. Thank you. Yes, the inverse of the statement is if a figure is not a rectangle, then it is not a parallelogram. Yes, sir.
So in the note, that let's call that squiggly thing.
Yes.
Is that not?
Absolutely.
So that
Yes.
means not.
Yes. The squiggly means not. How about the truth value of this statement? Jesse's hand shot up. Oh, wait, hold on. She's volunteering for the contrapositive before I've asked for it. I got you in mind. Definitely. You got this. Before we do though, can I talk about the truth value of the inverse? Is the inverse true or false? Is the inverse true or false? If a figure is not a rectangle, then it is not a parallelogram. That one is also false. I can use the exact same counterexample. I'm moving out of the way so Jesse doesn't knock me over. Hit it. Oh, let me move this thing out of your way.
I thought you were gonna be in my way.
No, I'm moving that out of your way.
It's hard to see.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Contrapositive is, if it is not a parallelogram, then a figure is not a rectangle. And finally, what is the truth value of that statement? If it is not a parallelogram, then it is not a rectangle. That one is true. If the original statement is true, remember the contrapositive, therefore, will also be true. You'll notice that there's a your turn. Same idea. You're taking the converse, inverse, and contrapositive of a statement. There is also a daily quiz. Daily quiz does not have to do with this rewriting of stuff. It's just what's on the front of the notes. So it'll be a lot easier. We'll deal with the other daily quiz having to do with switching around these statements on Monday. Do please make sure that you are taking today's daily quiz in addition to finishing up the your turn. I'm not. Thank you for bringing that up. Regarding the homework, I know on